Cool. So we are at part 2 of chapter 17. We're picking up at verse 9. This is where the sign of the circumcision comes in. God has just made this everlasting covenant. Okay, where I believe we're pointed to the fact that God is faithful, that He's true, that He can establish. He says, "I will," and that He does. That He will always be God Almighty, but that He forms this everlasting covenant. That stands, and that God says, "I will continue to be faithful. I will continue to uphold this everlasting covenant always." So I am always. I am Almighty. I am God, and I will continue to be God. So love that. You're part of the agreement. God told Abraham, because He's saying, "This is what I'm going to do," and I love that He gives clarity again on this, because the only thing He's called Abram to at that point was to serve. I am God Almighty. Serve me faithfully. Live a blameless life. So that's already this blanket statement. I'm God Almighty, and here's how you should respond to that. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. That'll lead you to live out the purpose for which you were created and be blessed and a blessing to others and to bless me. Yeah, I love this. So now He's giving that clarity. Verse 9, "You're part of the agreement," God told Abraham, because He's renamed him now to father of many nations, "is to obey the terms of the covenant." Obey the terms of the covenant. So I love that He says, this is what you got to do. And this comes back to faithful, blameless. This is accountability. You're part in this. Here are the terms. Obey. I love that. You and all your descendants have this continual responsibility. Okay? So just as this is everlasting, so is the expectation, and this, you're part of the covenant. Okay? This is what I expect. You have this continual responsibility, you and your descendants. This is the covenant that you and your descendants must keep. Okay? Now here's where He spells it out exactly. Each male among you must be circumcised. What? Okay, and then it's going to clarify this. The flesh of his foreskin must be cut off. This will be a sign that you and they have accepted this covenant. So just like you have agreements, if you were to make a binding legal contract and things, you have to sign. And in this covenant, in this agreement that you're entering into, this is the sign. Like He says a sign, but I mean, like, that's what that is. This is your stamp of approval. This is your signature that you agree to this covenant. This is you obeying and being faithful. Oh, man. And that's what it is. Every male child must be circumcised on the 8th day after his birth. This applies not only to members of your family, but also to the servants born in your household and the foreign-born servants whom you have purchased. So any member of your household in your specific community, right, that you are leading and housing and in close quarters with, they need to have this sign too. They need to obey this as well. All right, that's very interesting, and I think it speaks to speaks to a lot of things, but I think we've already seen a slight pattern of the proximity effect, like who you are near, the people around you, how that can impact things. But we'll dive into that a little bit more as this goes on, I am sure. Okay, so all must be circumcised. That's at verse 13. Your bodies will thus bear the mark of my everlasting covenant. So there's a lot of things that serve as a mark. Like you had a mark of Cain, you had a sign of a covenant. Like the rainbow is a sign of this covenant. I'm never going to destroy all the earth with a flood again. And that's not just so God's going to remember because He would forget. It's just that God is faithful to these covenants and these promises that He's made, and the I will statements that He does and that He fulfills, because He is the great I am. And He's almighty and able, but He's also almighty and faithful and good and trustworthy. And He has these signs not because He needs a reminder, but because they serve as a marker and a reminder to others. They serve as a warning to others, but they also serve as a reminder of God's power and ability and his faithfulness in so many of these cases. So this is a really big one, because your bodies will thus bear the mark of my everlasting covenant. And I love that that happens. You could take offense to that and say, yeah, but I mean, it's not like much different than a shirt. It's got a label and it tells you like who made that. And as our creator, I think God, has not only the right to do that, but I think that's just so awesome, because any of the goodness, any of the potential, any of the things that can take our breath away and be awesome to us points to his awesomeness. And I think that that's really interesting, that we are not only made in his image, so we're image bearers, but that people of this faith would have these marks to say where our allegiance lies, to point back to God. Here you've got it in a physical way. What's interesting to me is that that's such, one, that it's specific to males, but two, this is something that's a very private. That's literally a private. I mean, that's a very private marking. So it's such a weird thing that would only come out in intimate situations, or situations, I guess, where there would be shame or guilt, and that would be that weird reminder. Not just to the male, but to the females that knew this as well. So very interesting. I don't know. That's just a weird layer to think about for me. That we have this image of God and this potential and his being kind of imprinted in things, but then you've got this physical marking as well. When so many before this have been, more symbolic than physical, but like external to people and part of nature, maybe. This is one where there's hey, if you're taking up this covenant, this is how you do this. This is how you bear this mark. Yeah, it's a very legal, binding thing. It's interesting. Anyone who refuses to be circumcised, will be cut off from the covenant family for violating the covenant. So you're cut off from all these blessings and from being a part of these mighty nations and this heritage of God and this covenant if you refuse to be circumcised, if you don't have that mark of God, and you don't fulfill your part of this continual responsibility that you and your descendants must keep. So if you don't, you're going to be cut off from that, which is interesting because you're cut off either way. Oh, why do I do these things alone? Okay, so anyway, that's that. So, man, a big consequence there if you buy into the blessing. If you don't, then you're just like, I don't know, who cares? Cool, now we get to verse 15. The heading on this is Sarai is named Sarah. So Abram has been renamed to Abraham, meaning father of many, in this case, father of many nations. Now we're going to see Sarai is about to be renamed. So now it goes to this. Then God added, regarding Sarai, your wife, her name will no longer be Sarai. From now on, you will call her Sarah. And renaming is a big thing. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried taking on a different name, or like, hey, I want to be called, I don't know, at some point Sting had to say to all his friends, now you'll address me as Sting, and that had to be really weird. They're like, your name's Gordon Sumner. No, we're not going to call you Sting, Gordo, but I don't know, it's such a weird thing to suddenly do that. It's one thing where you have the authority to do that yourself, but sometimes you get nicknames kind of hurled on you or something, but to like completely be renamed is a really big deal, and you would question that if anybody said this to you, probably even your husband or wife or significant other, or your parents would be like, you know what, I really regret naming you Susan. You're clearly a Teddy, so we're going to name you Teddy. I don't know why that popped in my head, but the point is like you would even question those things. You're like, yeah, but I'm Susan, even though that was a horrible name because I have a beard. The point is like I love that you have this personal walk with Abram and this personal encounter of appearing before him and then speaking to him and clarifying all these things. But he did not do that with Sarah, who is now Sarai. He says this to Abraham And I just love that idea that Abraham's got to go be like, hey, I'm, calling you Sarah now. Because if he doesn't address it and bring it up, and she's like, you know my name, son. You better say my name, You better say it. You know my name, Sarai. And he's like, I don't like calling you that. I'm going to call you Sarah. Like, how do you do that? Then he's got to be like, all right, well, God told me we're going to rename you this. Because I imagine, like, hopefully he is living a faithful and blameless life and not being like, God told me that he didn't want meatloaf tonight. He wanted us to have a taco. They didn't eat that. But the point is like, hopefully he's not abusing those things. But I don't know. I think about the people in these situations and how, like, it would be received if suddenly I went to my wife and said, hey, your name is now this. Sorry. These are the things that pop up in my head. That's why I do this. Okay, so do things like that happen to you? Are you reading these and then do you ever catch those perspectives? Nope, just me. All right, cool. Anyway, he says, she will no longer be named Sarai. From now on, you will call her Sarah. The asterisk says, Sarah means princess. Interesting name. Interesting meaning there. Is that what it means in all of these? I don't know why it would be a different translation. It's the same word. Yeah, okay, so it means princess. I will bless her and give you a son from her. Now notice, God clarifies, because they made a mistake in chapter 16, and they were like, yeah, we're going to do this with Hagar. Now God clarifies, okay? I will give you a son from her. In case you missed that, buddy, I know about Hagar. I saw her and I heard her. There's a well that says, no, anyway. So, yeah, it's a big deal. And I'm not saying that passively. Yeah, big deal. I'm saying that's a big deal. I will bless her. So he says, I'm going to bless her, okay? And like a princess, you would think is very blessed. So that's interesting. We'll give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly. So I'm not just going to bless her. I'm going to bless her richly in an awesome way. Again, God going above and beyond. And she will become the mother of many nations. Kings will be among her descendants. So it's like, hey, in case you missed that, kings will come from you. And it's recorded here for us. Just in case you're missing this, kings will come from this. Love that. Picking up at verse 17 of chapter 17. Then Abraham bowed down to the ground. So again, bowed down to the ground. It doesn't say face fell in the dust this time. What it says here is he bowed down to the ground, but he laughed to himself in disbelief. Ooh, man. This is interesting. I was just trying to see if it always translates to disbelief. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself. In King James, it says, then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart. So you have this disbelief that's going on. This is an internal thing. He laughed to himself. Like right now I'm going, this is so stupid why I'm doing this in my head, but I'm not saying that out loud. I also don't think that it's stupid. I love doing this, and I hope you're enjoying it. Then Abraham bowed down to the ground, but he laughed to himself in disbelief. So he's thinking these things, like he had these doubts. He had this thought. How could I become a father at the age of 100? He wondered. Besides, and then he further goes to doubt this, Sarah is 90. How could she have a baby? Okay. So those are the things that he's thinking, that he's wondering, that he's laughing about. Is God, you've been faithful and everything else, but again, like I'm 100, she's 90. Okay, and so he's thinking these things. How? I love that he's asking those how questions, because questions are good. Questions are really good for asks. It's one of the reasons I'm going back through all of this, because it's good to ask questions. It's good to go back to the Word. I believe it's important for us in our faith to take our questions to God and invite Him into those areas of disbelief and of doubt, and to speak with other believers, but most likely, or most importantly, to reconcile all of our questions here, because otherwise it is feelings, and it is how. And God is so much more of a wow God. Very often it's like, you don't need to be concerned with how. I'm God. That's all you need to know. I'm God Almighty, and this is what I ask of you. And all you need to know is not how, but wow, I will. He will. I am. He is. So I love that we get a recording even of Abraham, um, that he's got that question and that disbelief. I love that that's recorded here. He wondered, besides, Sarah's 90, how could she have a baby? Verse 18, and Abraham said to God, so he thought those things, and then he says, yes, may Ishmael enjoy your special blessing. Because he's still hung up on, we've already got a baby. Okay, I'm great. I'm cool. There's a little strife there, and you know that, Lord, but I know you're going to make a way. But God replied, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son. So God's like clarifying, no. That was you taking matters into your own hands, okay? Not a good thing. I am going to work in that. But I've already gotten with Hagar about that, and we know about Ishmael, and I am and I will guide that how it needs to go. But I'm just talking about you and Sarah. Okay, this is what's going to happen. She will bear you a son. Like God already pointed that out. Your wife, okay, you will call her Sarah. I'm going to give you a son from her. So God's establishing, hey, that relationship, she's your wife. Be faithful in that, okay? I will provide, and I'm going to do this through her. There will be kings in your heritage. I love that God is so patient to reestablish these things. Hey, in case you missed it, I am, and I am, and I have, and I will. And you need to understand, when I say that, I mean I've got it figured out. Just trust me. Don't worry about the how. Just get caught up in the wow, and let that wow lead to worship and faithfulness and living a blameless life. Just, that's what you need to do. Cool? And then, here's this mark to say you belong to me. Love this. Okay. God replied, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son. You will name him Isaac. And I will confirm my everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. So he's saying, hey, that we're still in this covenant deal. Okay, and this is part of that. It's just you being faithful. You need to know, y'all are going to have a kid. You name him Isaac, okay? And I'm going to confirm my everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. So I'm going to continue to be faithful. Isaac means he laughs. So names seem to be a very important thing that people knew at that time. So to me, I think that that's God also acknowledging, hey, I know you were just laughing. I know that you're laughing to yourself. I know you have this disbelief. Just trust me. Don't get caught up on the how. Okay? So I love that layer. Yeah, he laughs. And I think God got a chuckle out of that. Okay. I will cause him to... verse 20. Sorry, because God said, I will confirm my everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. Verse 20. As for Ishmael, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. Just as you have asked. Okay, I'm going to bless him too. Okay, but that's not the kid. That's not the nation I was trying to establish with you. That's one that you established. I'm still going to bless him and honor this, but this is what I'm actually calling you to. Don't go knock up another servant, I guess. I will cause him to multiply and become a great nation. Okay? I'm going to continue multiplying through him and his descendants and establishing more of a mighty nation and mighty nations, and kings will come out of that. And your faithfulness is hinging here. 12 princes will be among his descendants. So again, you have princess, you have royalty, you have kings. I love that it specifically says 12 princes will be among his descendants. Because already we've seen kind of tribes and families being established in certain ways, certain peoples, especially coming out of the sons of Noah. But I love that you have this. It's like, hey, all of these nations are coming out of you and out of your son, Isaac. All right? So, love that. 12 princes will be among his descendants, but my covenant is with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. Okay? 12 princes will be among his descendants, meaning Isaac. Not Isaac, sorry. Meaning Ishmael. Sorry, I almost misinformed all of us by misreading that. That is connected in a statement there. I was taking that as Isaac, so that's the danger of a face value reading. You will name him Isaac, okay, saying, no, I want to redirect. It's not Ishmael, okay? Like, get that out of your head for a second. You're going to name your son, through Sarah, your wife, Isaac. I will confirm my everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. As for Ishmael, and this is the second section here, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. I will cause him to multiply and become a great nation. 12 princes will be among his descendants. Okay, so just making sure. That's going to Ishmael, not necessarily Isaac there, sorry. But my covenant is with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. So God gives a very specific time that this is going to happen in his faithfulness, because he realized, I think, that the waiting is what made them take matters into their own hands. It's like, well, you're saying you're going to bless us, and Abram at that time had that conversation with God, saying, you say you're going to make nations, and it's not happening. So yeah, I got with Hagar. That's what I'm going to get. And God saying, no, I'm going to do this. Just trust me. Don't get caught up on the how. And then they took the how into their own hands. Just like God interceded with Cain before Cain took matters into his own hands and dealt with it in the wrong way. I think that's interesting. But you see God being faithful even to Ishmael, saying, yeah, okay, that was mishandled, but I'm still going to honor that. Okay, I'm still going to honor him, and I'm still going to do things. There will be princes among his descendants. Notice, not kings, princes. So maybe that's what that distinction was. We'll find out where that goes. All right, that's the end of that little section there. Verse 22, that ended the conversation, and God left Abraham. So the conversation is done. God has spoken. And he says, my covenant is with Isaac. Yes, I'm going to bless Ishmael. Yes, there are going to be princes among his descendants. They're going to multiply in mighty nations as well. But my covenant, this everlasting covenant, and the one that I want you to uphold, with this mark of circumcision, with this mark of your faithfulness and a blameless life, that is going to be something that you and your descendants and the descendants of Isaac, that where the kings will come from, that is going to be established here. That ended the conversation. God left Abraham. 23, on that very day, Abraham took his son Ishmael and every other male in his household, and he circumcised them, cutting off their foreskins exactly as God had told him. Wow. Okay, that's an insanely hard thing to follow through on. You want to talk about God calling you some really challenging things? That had to be super challenging, because that's not just the babies, okay? That's not just an 8-day-old thing. It's like you've got to convince. If you came to me and say, hey man, we gotta deal with you and do this thing to your thing, like that's gonna cause some issues, right? You're gonna have a lot of hard discussions, probably. It's a very hard thing to get everybody fired up to do a certain thing that God told you to do, but when it is something that is such a cost, and one that requires a sacrifice, or that is a painful follow through, okay, that is a risky follow through, that's much harder to get people to follow through with and to get them rallied up for it. So I love that you have that layer in here, and I don't want to miss that. But he followed through. Conversation was over. Abraham heard, and he heard what God revealed and the call to action, and then he responded, and he responds faithfully, and he does this, gathering all of them, and he circumcises all of them in his household. Every other male, not just Ishmael, his son, every male in that. Wow. And he's faithful. So that's what he does, exactly as God had told him. Notice that, exactly as God has told him. Noah, exactly as God has told him. Okay? And we see the points when somebody did not do exactly. So far, it hasn't been great. So 24. Abram was 99 years old at the time, and Ishmael, his son, was 13. So a little bit of time has passed. No wonder Ishmael's on his mind. And he's like, yeah, what about my son? He's almost a man. He's going to inherit all this, right? Yeah, that adds a little context there. 26, both were circumcised the same day. 99 years old for Abraham, Ishmael, 13. along with all the other men and boys of the household, whether they were born there or brought there as servants. So again, whether they were foreign born or whether they were brought in. So whether they're blood relations or marriage, or whether they were brought in and they're just servants of that household. Anyone who is a member of this house that you are leading, Abraham, you need to have them uphold this covenant. And this will be a mark and a sign that you are part of this covenant. And this covenant is everlasting. And I'm excited to see where this goes, and I hope you are too. All right. Sorry, I went off on some weird tangents and some of those things, but I don't know. I feel like God reveals himself in those things. So if he's revealing stuff to you, if you don't feel comfortable putting in the comments, you can message me. We can talk. That'd be just fine. No problem there. If you're a person that's just randomly commenting and saying, hey, be my friends on YouTube, don't take it personally if I haven't done it. I genuinely don't know how to friend people on YouTube, and I don't know you if it's not like your name, I don't know you and I don't remember you. Sorry. I don't know. I'm still new to the YouTube stuff. And yeah, I'll keep going, see how long it goes. And I'll at least go through all of Genesis. But yeah, we'll see what happens next. Bye.